Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Meaning in Ministry. This is Tom Edmondson. I am in Atlanta, Georgia, United States, and I welcome back Dr. Anna Niiles-Maki, who is in Finland, and she this year published a book titled Handbook for Logotherapy, or for Logotherapists, pardon me. In a moment, you will see the link to the website where you can go and purchase that book, which I highly recommend. In that book, she introduces a number of terms, a number of concepts to help shore up the philosophical foundations of logotherapy, which is a philosophical form of therapy. And so, in our previous meeting, she talked about interventionist theory, and today her topic is regional ontology. So, I will leave it to her to explain everything. And so now, Dr. Niiles-Maki, would you please tell us about regional ontology?
Thank you so much. Uh, I have made a short PowerPoint presentation, which I'm trying to show you right now.
Yes.
Do you see it, Tom?
Yes, absolutely.
I try to make it. Okay. So, I have some little problems on. Okay, like this. Like this. So, before we can go to the theory of regional ontology, we must first define some concepts to be able to understand what this theory is really about. We have to go back to the origins of some philosophical concepts of ontic, ontology, metaphysics, logos, and ontological difference. And I can change. Okay, we start with the concept of ontic. Ontic uh, comes from the Greek words toon and plural taonta. And ontic worldview, ontic thinking, ontic way of living, it means purely or truly being in the world. It means to be connected with world without any trying or to theoretically disconnect a human or any other being from the unity of being in the world. This kind of worldview, if I can call it a worldview, uh, pre-Socratics had this. For example, Heraclitus and his archae of logos. Actually, I have to say that Heraclitus's archae was really a change about a change. And logos meant to understand that change and understand that the change is something that concerns the whole physis. And people didn't differ from any other beings in this sense, because this change applied for everyone. Logos is the principle, but the arche was really a changing. Ontology comes from the Greek words ontos and logos. And it means systematic efforts to understand and interpret our being in the world.
Let me, pardon
I'm
me for
sorry.
interrupting. I'm not seeing any changing of the slides. Are you changing the slides?
Yes, I am. You don't
Okay.
see it.
I
Okay.
still see your title slide. Maybe the present,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Eh,
Maybe you should take it off of presentation mode. Maybe I told you incorrectly. My apologies.
Okay,
Now it seems to be moving, but I still see the first slide.
now I change the slide.
That's perfect. I apologize. Just keep it in that mode and we can see them. I'm sorry
Ah,
for this. Yes, we can start
okay,
over, but it's not necessary. You can keep going if you like.
that's good that you told me because I would have talked and talked and talked and changed the slides. Good
Well,
that
the
you
good
told
news
me.
is I studied Greek, so I followed your words there, but I do worry that some of our people probably don't. So I'm glad you got it up there. Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
do you have anything on this ontic worldview? You
I
have studied Heraclitus, and I know you know his arche of the change, and there are several other pre-Socratics as well. But Heraclitus was my favorite, personal favorite, because I made my master thesis about Heraclitus's fragments.
No
So
one steps into
I
the
know
same
him
river
best.
twice. Yes.
Okay, so we can proceed.
Yes.
Okay. So the word ontology comes from the Greek words ontos and logos. And it means the systematic efforts to understand and interpret our being in the world. Uh, Systematic theories of what kind of ways being in the world can manifest itself. So ontic means the pure living, the way of understanding that we are genuine part of the world. The world is us, and we are the world. Ontology, on the other hand, it means trying systematically build theories about this being in the world. For example, Plato and his theory of ideas belong to the field of ontology. But uh, the ways of being in the world was itself thought to be too abstract and unshaped area of making systematic theories. Of course, it is very abstract and unshaped area. So in order to get a grip of this area somehow, philosophers eventually started to explore and explain it by exploring and explaining the essence of the beings that are in the world. And the essence comes from the Greek word eidos and from the Latin word essentia. And the philosophers started from bundling different beings into different categories and examining their essences as their own region. So we are moving from ontic worldview to the worldview of ontology and, and moving on. Well, Aristotle was the person, the philosopher, that began this process of categorizing the beings being in the world and exploring and explaining their essence. And this is called metaphysics. And this comes from the Greek words metaphysica, which means after physics. And from this tradition gradually emerged all the separate scientific disciplines, such as, for example, medicine, physics, theology, and psychology, only to name a few. And they study the essence of certain beings and phenomena. Now we have moved from the era of ontic worldview. We have moved to era of metaphysics, worldview of metaphysics, which is quite different from the worldview of the ontic era of worldview. Many people think that Aristotle was the one who started the Western philosophy. But that's for sure that he started the, the study of the essences of different phenomena. And so he was the father of science. he was the father of disciplines which developed. But not many people understand that Aristotle made a fundamental mistake. In his philosophy, he bundled the concepts of being in the world and beings together. He mixed them up, even though the two are very, very different things. Because asking how a being or phenomenon is being in the world, and asking what a being or phenomenon is it in self, they in their essence, those two generate very different answers.
Right.
And not many people think about this. Because they don't have to, but I have to because I'm a philosopher.
Yes.
For example, a person's being in the world is intertwined with the world because a person is a part of the world and the world is a part of a person. And this comes from the Greek concept of geimenon. What happens in the world happens in a person and vice versa. And this kind of thinking, this kind of worldview, this kind of living is an ontic and ontological way of understanding the world and ourselves. If we study what a person is, if we study their essence, we can get the answer, for example, that a person is a biological entity that consists of countless cells. That is very familiar. This kind of explaining is very familiar to us. Or that a person is a being whose essence is shown in their external and internal actions. And this is a metaphysical way of understanding the world and ourselves. But the important thing is to understand what is missing. What is missing in this metaphysical way is an understanding of what connects the parts of the world to each other and to humans as part of the world. And that's the core of it. It's missing logos. Logos comes from the Greek word legein. And legein means to express something significant. And logos means the expressed significant thing or issue or principle. So this metaphysical way is missing logos, which is the ultimate principle that intertwines all together. And for Heraclitus, as I said before, this was change. His logos, the expressed principle, was his arche, and that was change. And for example, here I have, if you see, the Finnish version of Heraclitus's Fragments, this is my favorite book actually. And I read it all the time because I always find something very deep in here. But this change, this arche of change, it's in many of his fragments. I just chose one little fragment, Pantarei kai ouden menee. And it means all flows and nothing stays still. This is not even my favorite fragment, but it shows quite well his thinking about the change.
Yes.
So we move on. We have moved from the era, the worldview of ontic, to the era of metaphysics. And from the era, the worldview of metaphysics, from that era or worldview has given birth to science and different disciplines. If we strive to study, understand, and explain a human being through their essence, different disciplines will provide different explanations. That is what Viktor Frankl had also said. And one of these explanations is based on the discipline of psychology, which emerged when scientists, theorists, and ordinary people, basically, they began to ask questions that were uncommon or unheard in the fields of philosophy and anthropology. And no adequate answers could be found. So the region of psychology was born this way. As psychology began to study and explain the human being by dissecting them structurally and functionally into ever and ever smaller parts, because it's science. New disciplines and fields were born in which new research findings were applied. Now we go to psychotherapy, because psychotherapy is one result of this application. Psychotherapy was therefore born out of psychology. The ontological region of psychotherapies, note plural, psychotherapies, is thus concerned with the human being from the perspective of their essence. So, Tom, I ask you to see if you are still awake.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't want to. Yes. Actually, for me, as you're going through this, I feel like we're on a parallel track with the early chapters in The Will to Meaning, because I'm thinking particularly about where Frankl discusses the problem is not that there are specialists. The problem is that specialists are generalizing and they're trying to reduce everything to their field. Like the biologist thinks everything is about biology and
Yeah.
so forth. And so I guess these are different areas of the region. And what I'm understanding you to say, and maybe I'm thinking too far ahead, but I'm thinking about, you know, as we go through history and we get more and more specialized and more focused on various, I'm going to say, domains, the concept of regional ontology should bring us back to see the whole.
Yep, the whole in that way that it reveals the different ontological regions and helps to understand that there really are these ontological regions that have their own way of explaining and understanding.
Yes.
And
Insider language almost, or specialist
yeah,
language.
yeah. So every discipline, including psychology, is born from metaphysics.
I like that.
So the ontological region of psychotherapies is concerned with the human being from the perspective of their essence, and study of essence of beings and phenomena belongs to the field of metaphysics, not ontology.
Very nicely put.
But I have to make a statement here. Unlike psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, it's not psychotherapy because it has a different ontological region. Psychoanalysis was born out of psychiatry, and psychiatry belongs to the ontological region of medicine. So psychoanalysis has different ontological region as psychotherapies. And this is something that is I think it's very controversial.
Yes.
I just finished a book. This is finished in Finnish, but this is just a few actually, a few days ago, I finished this book, The History of Psychiatry by Edward Shorter. Although it's quite an old book from it was published in 1997. Still, it explains so well how and why psychiatrist was born, and what kind of issues and problems and what kind of other fields were connected to psychiatry.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And in this book too, it's clear that psychoanalysis was born out of psychiatry,
Mm.
and psychiatry is a part of medicine.
So
So,
I have a question.
yeah,
Go ahead. I think there's some question about whether psychoanalysis is a science or not.
it's a therapy. I
Yes.
say it's therapy. It's a therapy form like psychotherapies, but it has a different kind of ontological region. But it's a therapy form.
Okay.
I can't see why it can be a science. I really can't. Uh, it can be a set of theories. Psychoanalysis has a set of theories that's in the basis of psychoanalysis, but it can't be a science in no way. It's a therapy form, and it's based on psychiatry and medicine, of course.
Nice.
So, understanding being in the world. We have talked about being in the world for a lot since the slide one, because it's being in the world, it's the most fundamental way of understanding ourselves and the world we live in. We all are in the world. So being in the world is fundamental way of being in the world. But if we strive to study, understand, and explain a human being through the being in the world, we are forced to abandon the way of metaphysics and
Mm.
thus the way of different disciplines, because disciplines, metaphysics, and then different disciplines began the study of a human being or other phenomena from the perspective of their essence. So we are forced to abandon this way of metaphysics and the disciplines. And we are forced to return to ontology, because ontology strives to study, understand, and explain a human being in the world.
Mm.
And I think I don't know if you had these questions that why not we cannot return to ontic, because ontic is pure being in the world, the pure understanding, and logos comes from this ontic worldview, and so why can't we go back to ontic worldview and understand that? But the simplified answer is that we can't do it anymore, because we are alienated from the world we belong in. We've come so far to this metaphysical way of studying, dissecting, uh, categorizing,
Mm-hmm.
conceptualizing, that we can, it, or I don't say that some of us may be able to understand the world the ontic way, but it's very rare. It's very rare that people could do that. So the only way we can relate to the world again is to understand how we are in the world. And that is, unfortunately, that's not pure being in the world, pure understanding our place in the world, and understanding and that we are not connected from the world. We are connected from the world thanks to metaphysics, I'd say. We
Yes.
are we are disconnected from the world. So the only way is to try understand how we are in the world. And this is very close to logotherapy's core. Logotherapy is the result of two philosophical questions. How is a human being in the world? And why is a human being in the world? So logotherapy is all about these two questionings, these, and they are trying to answer to these two questions. The first of these questions is ontological. How is a human being in the world? That's an ontological question, not metaphysical, but ontological. I'm very
Right.
strict about this, as you
Sounds
see.
good. Yeah.
And the second one, why is a human being in the world?
Hmm.
That's an ethical question, because to answer this why question, we must take a stand on some ethical issues like freedom of will, purpose of all life, purpose of one's life, purpose of my life, and how we treat people. Do we treat them? Do we treat them with respect, with with having intrinsic values, or with instrumental values? These all are ethical questions. So, do you have anything?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, and I don't want to anticipate or take away from something you're going to say, but I agree 100%. I like that the why question is an ethical question, but you got me thinking about how the why question is also a metaphysical question,
Yeah,
and the reason for that. That are you going to get to that or? Yeah.
no,
Okay. And I'm just thinking about a few places where Frankl himself, like an interview that I saw with him, where he says, for the religious person, finding a purpose in life is not the final, because if there's a purpose, if there's a meaning in life, then there must be a purpose giver, you know,
yeah,
and that speaks to the why question as well. Of course, not everybody's religious, and not everybody who practices logotherapy uh, is religious. But for those of us who are, the why question also asks, I think, if there is a purpose that is outside of me that I must discover, then there must also be I think Frankl used the word, if there's a task, there is a task giver along that line. So you made me think of that. I thought I would interject it.
that's a good point. What you said.
Mm,
I don't think it's metaphysical. I think it's ontological,
mm,
or even antique
okay.
question, because it it refers to something transcendent, the transcendent reality.
Mhm.
We really can't understand all of what that. I'd say that we there is the region we understand in of the world is very narrow. It's very, I don't know the word. What is the word? I'm trying to find, but it's not wide.
Yeah, narrow is a good word,
Ah,
or
okay, okay.
confined, limited.
Yeah, limited, very, very limited. And
Okay.
Peter Frankl has written that And in philosophy, we think that we have to recognize the transcendent, but we never can we can't really get a grip of this transcendent because it's transcendent for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If it wasn't transcendent, then it would be a part of our world, and we would treat it like some some other being in the world.
Agreed. This is why I argue that even though we talk about logotherapy not or logo philosophy not being theology, it really does kind of operate in the field of natural theology
Yeah.
as opposed to revealed theology. Because natural theology, we can say that it's clear that there is a transcendent reality. What that is, we're not going to say, and that's kind of where logotherapy or logo philosophy kind of stops. It's up, and then Frankl says it's up to the individual to decide to step beyond that or not. So yeah, good point.
So Viktor Frankl combined the principles of phenomenology and
Mhm,
hermeneutics
mhm.
for the first question and existentialism for the second one. And in this way, he developed his own set of theories, and that's called logophilosophy. Logophilosophy. Was I pronouncing it right? Logophilosophy.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So logotherapy as an application of logophilosophy was thus born in the context of philosophical questioning. Logotherapy's own ontological region thus deals with a human being from the perspective of their being in the world.
Mhm.
And when we go back, we can see that psychotherapies are concerned with the human being from the perspective of their essence. So the difference is clear. The ontological difference is very clear.
Mhm.
Whether a person or phenomenon is studied and understood through being in the world or through their essence is called an ontological difference. The regional ontological difference, on the other hand, it means that the phenomena, events, and beings belonging to a specific area are defined and understood only within this specific region, and they exist as such only for this specific region. And psychology and other disciplines with their applications have their own ontological region. And psychotherapy is an application of psychology,
Mhm.
and they have their own ontological regions. These regions differ from each other as a result of research, understanding, and explanation. But, of course, there is an exception, philosophy. Philosophy, it's different from other disciplines because its region has given rise to other disciplines over time.
That's right.
And, and philosophy, too, has defined an ontological region there. So we can put philosophy and the disciplines together
Mm.
because they have really a big difference, difference of quality and difference, ontological difference.
Mhm.
So now we finally come to regional ontology, what it means. The concept or theory of regional rather a theory of regional ontology. It was first introduced by the German philosopher Edmund Husserl, and he was the founder of phenomenology. He used the theory of regional ontology in his books, and these are the books
Mhm.
I've quoted in my own book.
Okay.
So Husserl's ideas and Husserliana 3. And they are, of course, as references in my book too. So you can find them there on the pages too, where I refer.
Nice.
So what did Husserl really mean by regional ontology? So I say it in the very simplified and very simplified way.
Sure. Absolutely.
Uh, in my account, what I understand, Husserl was trying to show that although we cannot return to an ontic worldview anymore, it's impossible for us, but we still can reveal ontological differences in the essences of the phenomena we experience and study. This
Hmm.
is the simplified core of what he meant by regional ontology. And this revealing is best manifested in the process of the emergence of different disciplines. For example, in the emergence of the disciplines of psychology. Before we go to these two diagrams, would you like to ask me something? Is there something that you'd like to talk about?
Um, well, let's see. Perhaps I do. I think I have interjected most of my comments. I will say that I am following you, and I'm. If I get that glazed look in my eyes, it's probably because you've made me think about something, and my mind is going in 25 different directions, which is a good thing. Um, I feel like I've gone back to school today. I'm learning a lot, so I appreciate the lessons. Um, Let me see. Oh, I will say one thing. You reminded me of something. When I was in graduate school, I had a professor. I think so. This is probably when I was doing my degree in Jewish studies, but I had a professor who made an analogy. Of course, we're talking about theology and biblical studies, but she said that humans are like um, animal hardware trying to run divine software. And
Can you say it again?
animal hardware
Mm?
trying to run divine software. And when we talk about the transcend, we talk about being in the world, we talk about being alienated from the world and being aware of something transcendent. It is like we are reaching beyond ourselves, but uh, it almost crashes our system. That I don't know how else to kind of draw out that analogy. But you kind of made me think about that too as we're going through this discussion of you know I guess being in the world. And Heidegger is in the shadows there somewhere. And um, yeah, I'll stop.
You made me think. Now you made me think.
Oh, good.
Mm. Uh, I was thinking, you know the Greek word aletheia?
Truth.
Yeah, it means revealing
Hmm.
the truth.
Yes.
And in pre-Socratic worldview, in their thinking, the truth and reality were synonyms. They were the same.
Hmm. Yes.
But in our worlds, truth and the reality, I think they have no connection anymore. And if we try to understand being in the world, we, I think we try to understand at the same time aletheia. We try to understand how this being, how our being in the world as it is revealed us
Hmm.
and reveals us the truth of reality.
Yes. I like the fact that Aletheia has LTEA in it. which for me is the way of shortening logotherapy and existential analysis. And
Ah,
just me being silly, but um,
I didn't recognize. Oh, that's great that you said it.
I can think of a million and one idle fancies when I get started. But I do like the fact that Aletheia has LTEA in it, of course, um, and I do believe that to my mind, Aquinas and the Scholastics comes to mind simply because they synthesized, and of course now I'm oversimplifying, but they synthesized sort of a Platonic idealism and uh, Aristotelian, what's the word here, realism, into a sort of, one explains the big picture and one explains the being in the world aspect. So I guess the famous painting, Plato was doing this and Aristotle's doing this, you know, and so I feel like we are in many ways revisiting this from a different angle, from the psychology angle, the same interplay of idealism, Platonic forms or Platonic ideas, and Aristotelian realism, and how does that manifest itself? And I think of Carlos Linnaeus. Of course, I know that's a Latinized version of a Norwegian person's name, but the whole taxonomic system of biology, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species, the idea of trying to sort of parse out all the different examples of being in the world. So for Plato, you have any tree that's out here is a reflection of the ideal tree, right? And for Aristotle, it's like, well, that's a pine tree, and that's an oak tree, and that's an evergreen.
Mm.
So yeah, that's so my mind is just circling around in a lot of different areas here, but it's all good.
We see the trees,
Mhm.
but we don't understand that the trees are grounded somewhere. They are trees for us, the different kind of trees, but that their being is the same being as we have. We can't understand that. You don't understand because we have separated ourselves from the world. So we look at the world, we go to the nature, we preserve the nature, or at least we try to preserve the nature.
Mhm.
But every, I think everything we do is to cause harm by doing a lot of things to some things.
Mhm.
Even if we mean good, we still manage to do harm because of this disconnection of the world.
I
We
agree.
don't.
I think what disconnects me from the world is my sense that there is a something beyond it, that I feel like I'm existing between two different realities. But that's a very religious perspective, and not everybody's going to agree with that.
I think that I'm trying very hard to maintain this auntic worldview,
Hmm.
and it's hard in modern era. It's
Yes,
very hard in modern era.
absolutely.
But to go to this next slides, I will try to demonstrate in practice how regional ontology shows the difference between psychotherapies and logotherapy. And these diagrams are found in my book. First, we go to okay. First, we go to the positioning of psychotherapy, regional the positioning of psychotherapy and its ontological region. And of course, we have to start from the discipline of psychology. As we have seen, psychology has its own ontological region, and it has emerged from philosophy and anthropology. And in psychology, inside the discipline of psychology, there's different schools or orientation of psychology. We pick one. We pick one school or orientation of psychology. When we pick one, this school or orientation has its own human image, or at least perspective of a human. It has some sort of perspective of a human or some sort of human image. And from this overall human image or perspective of a human, from some specific orientation of psychology, from this comes the same schools or orientations, personality theory, and maybe even a theory of consciousness. And from these personality theory and maybe theory of consciousness too, from these the specific psychotherapy is originated. A specific psychotherapy that's based on human image and personality theory and or theory of consciousness of a particular school or orientation of psychology. We can derive this backwards or whatever, but these are the components of how a psychotherapy is born, what it's formed of. Does this raise any questions?
I think I understand it. I think it's pretty straightforward. That, and I guess in my case, I'm just thinking that there are, multiplying number of schools of psychology or of psychotherapy that because of different perspectives of the human and so forth. And obviously, I think what draws us to logotherapy is the perspective of humanity as not being two-dimensional, but three-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the spiritual, the noetic component there.
Yeah. I have an example of this positioning in my book. Would you like me to read this example of this?
Absolutely.
Okay. This discipline of psychology is divided into several traditional schools or orientations, as we spoke. One of these is orientation of cognitive psychology. And in simplified terms, in cognitive psychology, a person is defined as an active information processor that can modify their thinking and actions. And this is its human image, the human image of cognitive psychology. Based on this image of a human, a person is seen as a person whose behavior is influenced by goals, survival expectations, and schemas. Did I say right? Schema?
Schemes, yeah.
Schemes, okay.
Plans, thought, yeah.
Schemas related to the situation. And these are schemas. Was it right? Schemas?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. When they are related to the situation, they form different kind of things. They form our thinking. And this is the personality theory inside the human image in cognitive psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Cognitive psychotherapy is based on both the cognitive human image of a person and the perspective of a person in its personality theory. And the therapy, it aims to affect distortions of thinking, which is called cognitive dissonance in that field. For example, by modifying schemas and affecting distorted thinking structures. And this is an example of one orientation of psychology. Cognitive psychology is just one school of psychology. There are a lot more schools of psychology. So this is why I don't speak about psychotherapy, but psychotherapies.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no one psychotherapy. There are a lot of different psychotherapies, a really wide range of different psychotherapies, and they all have their own. They are all originated from a specific school or orientation of psychology, and these orientations have their own human images and their own personality theories, and then maybe their own theory of consciousness as well. So there is no one psychotherapy. And this comes as a shock for example, my psychology students. They are shocked. What? If a doctor says you have maybe you can seek psychotherapy, they think that it's just the same, or it's all the same. Psychotherapy is the same. It's not. It really is not. And I think this is something that is kept in psychological region. This information.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's not for everyone. And I think this is wrong. You have to tell that it's not one, there doesn't exist one psychotherapy. A number of different psychotherapies exists, including their own personality theories and human images and background orientation of psychology. So we go to logotherapy at the same way. Logotherapy is based on philosophy. Mm-hmm. And in the field of philosophy, we have different schools and orientations. For example, we have existential school, we have phenomenological movement, we have hermeneutic orientation. Logophilosophy is originated or based on existential, phenomenological, and hermeneutic orientation. All these three.
Yes.
So that forms the entity of logophilosophy. Well, logophilosophy has its own logophilosophical perception of human. And it has its own logotheoric theory of consciousness. It has its own, those two. And from those two, we can go to logotherapy, which is applying logophilosophy. Logotherapy has its own logophilosophical perception of human, mm-hmm. and logotheoretic theory of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And they are based on logophilosophy, which is based on existential phenomenological hermeneutic orientation, which of course is based on philosophy. So we can easily see that the positioning of these two treatment methods or treatments, logotherapy and psychotherapies, several different psychotherapies, they have their own ontological region. There's
Mm.
no doubt. They
Yes.
have their own ontological region. Of course, this is just one theory, one philosophical, phenomenological theory, this ontological region, theory of ontological region. But in this PowerPoint, I hopefully managed to show why and how logotherapy cannot belong to the region of psychotherapies. I think it's even impossible to think such a way of thinking about logotherapy.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Yes.
Still, I don't go even there. But there are also many other arguments to justify this conclusion. The conclusion is that it's impossible
Hmm.
to to understand that logotherapy could be psychotherapy.
Right.
It's impossible.
I agree.
And these are the related theories. Unfortunately, we really don't have time to go into these because it takes several hours and lots of conversation. But these are the theories. And all these theories, they share the same arguments. These arguments can justify the existence of the neurological dimension of human consciousness, and that is an essential premise of the region of logotherapy. There wouldn't be any logotherapy, there wouldn't be any logophilosophy without the premise that
Hmm.
that the neurological dimension of human consciousness really exists.
Hmm.
It's an essential premise.
I think that you have here a very, very powerful argument. And it, once I understood it, once I grasped it, it, it's, like the clouds parted and the sun was shining through. I really, really understood it, and I appreciated that. I can only speak for myself, and I am still a student of logo philosophy. But it seems to me that you have done a great service to this field uh, by putting it this way. And if I may, I'll just sort of, I'm working on my diplomate project now. And my diplomate project is basically an application of the noetic principles of logotherapy, logophilosophy to pastoral care and counseling. And one thing that I am very adamant about in what I'm doing is, as a pastor and other pastors, we do not do therapy. That's we refer people. Now, I may sit with a person or a couple or family for an hour as their pastor, but then I will say, I will do my best as a spiritual leader, but I want to refer you to this person here for family counseling, marriage counseling, whatever. Um, so what I get from what you're saying that goes along with this is my, to use the language of driving, this is my lane. When I'm driving, I stay in my lane. I stay in that lane. And so in English, we say, stay in your lane. You probably heard this statement before. So, but if I have a member of my congregation who is having an issue and they come to me and I think, well, maybe there's a physical cause for this. Maybe it's a depression, but it could be related to some physical cause. I have no business telling that person, trying to help them, I need to send them to a doctor, to a physician, because that is the regional ontology of that problem would be the physical, right? Am I
Yeah,
on the right
right.
track?
Yeah,
If a person has a depression that may be connected to the brain, to some kind of mental process, maybe I do send them to a psychiatrist to get a prescription for antidepressant or whatever. But if they check out physically, they check out mentally, then for people who only have a two-dimensional view of the humanity, the only thing they know to do is to give a stronger prescription.
Mhm.
Whereas for us, it's like, no, there is the spiritual, the noetic realm, and that's our regional ontology for doing logotherapy. So yeah, I agree. I think logotherapy is not a psychotherapy. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Mhm.
I strongly. I don't even feel, but that's a fact.
Yes.
Logotherapy is not a psychotherapy. It doesn't belong to the regional ontology of these different psychotherapies.
This is not to say that a logotherapist doesn't do psychotherapy with a person who needs psychotherapy. Correct?
Can you say it again?
Yeah. So let's say that you're a full-time therapist. You practice logotherapy, but perhaps you also practice uh, some form of psychotherapy.
So if I am licensed psychotherapist,
Mhm.
I have a psychotherapist education, the training program I have graduated. Then I'm a psychotherapist, but I'm not a logotherapist. If I'm a logotherapist, I have graduated the education of the training program of a logotherapist.
Mhm.
These two training programs differ from each other. And why do they differ? They
Oh,
differ. Okay, I was asking, but it
okay.
could be rhetorical. It can be rhetorical
Okay,
because
sure.
I can answer because because of the neurological or noetic dimension of
Hmm.
human consciousness. That is that's the core thing that separates them. Because
I
well, mhm,
well, I was just thinking about um, the fact that let's take man's search for ultimate meaning, der unbewusste Gott, in the chapter on dreams, uh, which I think is Frankl is using the phenomenon of spiritual, religious oriented dreams as a phenomenological proof for the existence of an inner spiritual sense, which is a noetic logotherapeutic concept. But I would think that the interpretation of dreams and the fact that it kind of comes up in the unconscious is to a certain degree a depth psychology practice. Does that make sense?
yes.
So, does a logotherapist practice depth psychology but not psychoanalysis or psychotherapy? I know it's a kind of a loaded
Mm,
question.
psychoanalysis is it has a connection with a somatic reality.
Hmm.
That is a topic of our some interview in the future, but it has a connection to that.
Yes.
Logotherapy has a connection to two realities: transcendent reality and situational reality.
Hmm.
And these connections to different realities, different perspectives in our world, different ontological places in our world, they they generate different kind of therapy, different kind of understanding
Hmm.
of the world and of ourselves.
Hmm.
So we cannot we can use dreams, but we have to understand that dreams are dreams. They have a lot of different kind of explanations, but it, there are no there's no I always say to my students that there's no mystery in logotherapy.
Hmm.
It's transcendence is not a mystery. It's not something paranormal behavior or something like that. It's transcendent reality. And transcendent reality, we can understand that we have to have a transcendent reality. We have to have this transcendent because of the ultimate purpose of life overall. So we have to have this transcendent. But it's not paranormal, or it's not something that is very mysterious.
Right. I agree. It's not an epiphenomenon
Mm,
either, at least not from a logotherapy or logophilosophical
mm,
perspective.
mm.
Uh, maybe there are people, I guess, who do think of it that way. But yes, uh, very well put. I have to say, my brain does not hurt, but it certainly feels like it has had a good exercise today.
That's good because me too. You got me thinking.
Oh, good. I'm
That's
glad to hear
always
that.
good. Thinking is always good.
Yes.
Uh, when we talk about some in the future, when we talk about this logotherapy theory of human consciousness, I I I, I explain then these four parts, two dimensions and four parts, and their connection to each other, and their connection to reality, and that I'm sure it somehow clarifies the the place of logotherapy and the significance of logotherapy in modern therapy field, because therapy is very important in a therapy field, very important, but it shouldn't be mixed with psychotherapies. Psychotherapies are very important too,
Mhm.
but there are different kind of problems that psychotherapy can help with.
Right, right.
And there are certain kind of things that logotherapy can help with. And they
Exactly.
shouldn't be mixed together. And they can be mixed together because of because of the neurological dimension of human consciousness that has its own uh, it has its own agents, and it has its own uh, operational mechanisms. It functions very different way than the psychic dimension of human consciousness. And
Right.
every logotherapist should understand this.
Sure.
Every logotherapist.
And I guess to state it simply by quoting Frankl, a higher dimension is inclusive, but also above the other dimensions. And so, thus, regional ontology brings us back to dimensional ontology in that sense, that
Yeah.
the region of logotherapy is a higher dimension. And if you are looking from below, you may not see it, you may not understand or appreciate it.
Mm, that's true. That's very true.
Well, I can put a check mark on my calendar. I said something true today. That makes me feel really good. Well,
I hope we both did.
I think we did. And again, I'm very grateful that you have shared this conversation with me and with everyone who was watching. Is there anything else you would like to say to to everyone who is watching before we end the recording?
Only that logotherapy is it needs to be uh, learned, and it it needs to be trained properly, because you have to learn to be a logotherapist. You have to
Yes.
it, when you become a logotherapist, you have to understand the logophilosophical theory basis, and understand that logotherapy is based on philosophy, not psychology. That's very important.
Yes, yes, yes. And so everyone should purchase your book, Handbook for Logotherapists, at your website, which is logotherapeuti.fi. I'm sure I didn't say it exactly correctly, but
It
there's
was,
pretty good.
yeah.
And two T's in there. But anyway, just if you can't remember that, everybody who's watching, just type in logotherapy in Finland and look for the center. I'm going to get it wrong. Uh, the you can tell us this Institute for Purpose Centered Philosophy. Sorry.
Yes, yes. Institute for Purpose Centered Philosophy, Finland. Yes.
Wonderful. And the book is well worth the money. and it deserves not one read, but 5 or 10 reads so that we can really understand it, because it's very well written, but very scholarly. And again, thank you for sharing. And again, from that, so far we've done interventionist theory and regional ontology. And sometime in the future, what would be our next step?
I think it should maybe be Lauri Rauhala's theories,
Mhm.
the holistic perception of a human and his theory of consciousness.
Mhm.
But
Good.
if you think that they are too difficult or they should be ignored, then we go straight to the logotheric theory of consciousness. But either of these two will be the next one topic
Well,
of that.
my answer is I'm not afraid of it being difficult. Typically, if I read something difficult or see something difficult, I will just keep reading it and keep watching it until it begins to make sense. And so I will encourage everyone else to do the same thing. Okay. Okay. I will stop the video now, stop recording now.